Hi friends, Tracy here from the Sewing Channel. Today's video, super exciting for a couple of reasons. First exciting thing, some of you may remember my scrap wall of fame where I have all of the colors of all of my scraps up on display in my sewing. I have diligently been trying to use up my scraps since I made my scrap wall of fame. So far up till now, I hadn't made a dent in them until I made this quilt right here. If you want to see just how many scraps I used up and how many are missing from the clear pouch on my scrap wall of fame, you'll have to stick around to the end. The second exciting thing, I took the design of my scrappy American flag quilt and made this available to you as a free printable download. I know. This is the first time I've ever put any of my designs and measurements on paper. I even give you the free star template right here that you can cut out to make the same exact stars that I made on today's quilt. That is some exciting stuff. I need to take a moment here and just tell you how much I appreciate you. And I mean that with all of my heart. I am grateful for each and every one of you. You watch my videos, you like my videos, you subscribe to my channel, and you just keep coming back. And I love that. I want to take a moment and really thank Janice Long for buying me coffee. Thank you so much, Janice. I appreciate you. There's also someone else who bought me coffee, bought me 3 coffees, and I have no idea who they were. They clicked on the link in the description box and clicked to buy me coffee. Well, they bought me 3 coffees, and all the name says is someone. So someone bought me 3 coffees. Well, I appreciate you too, someone. Now let's get back to what y'all came for. Enough talking already. Let's get busy making this huge, and I mean huge, scrappy American flag quilt. Once you have all of your muslin strips cut out, you'll have 13 altogether of 7 long strips and 6 short strips. Let's work on one of the red shorter strips. I'm going to pile up the one end of the muslin here and start on this end right here. So when I sew it, it'll all sew and push it, sew, and it'll all come out this way. That way the bulk won't be underneath the arm of your sewing machine. You can see here I've already pressed a bunch of my scraps nice and flat, and I've already attached a couple of them together that sort of matched up in size. What I'm going to do is lay that right over top of the muslin, and it's okay that it hangs over because we are going to trim all of that. And then you'll grab another piece and you'll put right sides together. You'll see first which looks better to your eye, and flip it right sides together, and then sew a 1/4 inch connecting it together with the other piece and attaching it to the muslin all at the same time. Flip it over, finger press. I do give it a hot press as well once it's attached. Grab another scrap. Make sure it's going to fit on the width of your strip. Flip it right sides together. Finger press. Grab another scrap and just continue sewing all the way down this strip until you have filled it all up. Big scraps like this one will help you get through this strip a lot faster. I'll finish the rest of this strip up and then I'm going to show you how I trim it. Here's the strip all sewn with all of the scraps, and you can see the muslin on the back and all the sewing. It's important to note that at the end of each of these strips that I did put a tiny stay stitch right on the very edge, just a tiny bit in. That's just to keep this adhered while I'm working on the whole entire quilt. I did that on both ends. To trim this, you're going to simply just turn it over. You're not going to trim any of the ends yet. My strips are 5.5 inches wide, so I'm just going to verify that with the ruler, and then I'm going to trim one side at a time. Flip it around and trim the other side. So you're going to be looking at the back of this strip when you trim it. And then everything is nicely trimmed. Here is my white or low volume strip. I just wanted you to take a look at it and see how I put all of those scraps together. You can see I added bits of color. As long as it was low volume, it was totally okay. You can see that one even has like a green tint to it, and it was fine for this quilt because the overall look is going to be red and light. So I just wanted to give you an example of that. The template that I provided is only half of a star. So you'll want to cut out exactly what you see on the printout. You're going to take and fold just a regular piece of paper in half. Once the paper's folded, on the fold side right here is where you put that straight edge. And then you're simply going to just trace around it. Now cut out the star while it's folded. Open it up, and you should have your 5-pointed star. For my applique, I'm going to be using Heat and Bond Light. It is the purple colored package. You can see right there, purple, Heat and Bond Light. With the Heat and Bond Light applique, there is a gluey, bumpy side, and then there is a smooth side. The smooth side is the side that you want to make all your marks on. So you'll just want to lay out each of the stars, saving as much space as you can, but don't get so close that they share lines. We're going to press this glue side down without cutting any of these first onto a white piece of 100% cotton. And then we will cut them out meticulously. If you cut it out beforehand, you will not have a good outcome. You want to make sure that you cut out your stars after they've already been adhered to the cotton. So when you go to trace the next one, make sure that it is not sharing that same line right there. You want to make sure that it has its own line and some space in between. Continue to trace until you get 50 stars on this sheet of paper. Here I have 1.5 yards of white fabric that I'm going to use for my stars. This is the only thing that won't be scrappy on my quilt. You're going to lay your fabric wrong side up. So you're going to take that Heat and Bond that you made all those stars on, and you're going to iron it on and press it on to this right here. It's also important to note that you do not want to use heat erasable pen when you make your stars, because when you go to heat this, it will disappear if it's heat erasable. Just a side note. You can only imagine why I add that note in there, right? Because I've totally done that. Take your hot iron and then just press this onto the fabric. It only takes about 2 seconds to adhere. Once you have that first sheet ironed on, turn this around and expose the other half of the fabric. Now you can cut this right down the center of this fabric if it's hard for you to maneuver this around. Take your other Heat and Bond sheet. If you can get it close over here, you can save some of this white fabric over here for excess. You're going to press this sheet right here onto the wrong side of your white fabric, just like you did over here. Once you have both of those sheets all pressed on nicely and everything's adhered, then you're going to rough cut out each one of these stars. Once you have your pile of rough cut stars, then it's time to trim them precisely with a sharp pair of good scissors. Once you get your entire pile of stars precisely cut, then you're going to sit down and take a pin and lift all of the stars off of the paper. It shouldn't be too hard either. You can see it lifts up nice and easily. I want you to notice that this is the fabric side right here. And you can see there's something really shiny on there. And then you just discard this paper. When we go to place our white stars onto our quilt top, it is going to stick with some heat from our iron, and it sticks because of this right here. This is a thin layer of sticky on the back of this fabric once you peel it off. It's not going to stick though until you get heat on it. Once you get that back off, just set it aside in a pile. I put them in piles of 10 just to make sure that I actually had 50 stars, which is what it's going to take for the American flag. Set these aside and we'll come back to these here soon. You can see here I already have one of the pieces all sewn up with a bunch of my blue scraps. These are the pieces that we're going to be putting those white stars on. In order to keep things in nice, neat order so that things didn't get so out of hand for me, I decided to make 4 white muslin pieces of this right here. So this is one of 4 pieces that I have put all of my scraps on. You can see the muslin there on the back where I had almost like quilt as you go type deal there, and just put them all over this one piece of muslin. Now I have 3 more pieces, 1, 2, 3 that I need to do. I did make them a little bigger to start because I wasn't sure how much of this I was going to cut down for the stars. I wanted to be sure that I had enough room to put all 50 stars. And since I kind of quilt and sew as I go and come up with things, this is what I came up with. It's much better to have more than not enough in the end. These pieces right here are approximately 17 inches by 19 inches in a rectangle shape. These are some of the scraps that I have ironed up ahead of time so that I can show you how I put them on top of that muslin. The one thing that I made sure of was that everything was sort of in a box shape, a rectangle or a square. It didn't matter width or length, it just had to be with nice clean edges. So that way when I do go to put, say, this piece down and I want to add this piece to it, I can then just add it, flip it over, sew it, and then cut off this right here nice and cleanly so that I can use this in another part of the quilt. Let me show you exactly how I put those onto the white muslin. So here is that rectangle piece of muslin, another one of the 4 pieces. I'm going to simply just grab a good size piece actually to begin with, put it somewhere in the middle. Doesn't have to be center, nothing has to be precise in this process. I totally want everything to be very organic. So my first piece is this one that I want to connect on there. So I'm going to simply just lay it down, match it up along the edge there, and you see that this is quite a bit longer. So as straight as I can get it, I'm going to just cut off the excess and then save this piece for another part of the project. I'm not really making sure that everything is perfectly precise. I just know that I want everything to be sort of in a block. Then I'm going to just flip this over like so and finger press with my nail. I am going to flip it over here real quick though and iron it. I have been ironing after I add each piece just because I feel like my work comes out just a lot more neat looking and orderly when I do that. Okay, so that's been pressed. Now I'm just going to turn it like so, almost like a log cabin type effect. I'm not making sure that everything is perfectly straight either. I'm taking this light blue and it didn't matter. Any of my blues were up for game in this project. Now I'm going to lay that down and match it up along this edge. And you can see the excess here again, so I'm going to snip that off. Flip it over, finger press it, and then I'm also going to hot press it. I want to spice this up a little bit, so I'm going to take these two scraps right here and I'm going to sew them together. I'm going to press them. Add this piece right here, and it's okay that there's color within there. I'm totally okay with that. I need to use up these scraps. You can cut these off if you want, or leave them in the quilt, that's fine too. So if we add that one there, and we add this one onto here, we should have enough this way. I'm going to add this blue onto this set, so to speak. If you want to at this point, you can trim these all nice and even. I'm going to go ahead and sew this piece, flip it over here, and sew it on here, lining everything up. So from there, you're going to flip it and add a piece here. And this one looks like it fits. Trim this. And then you just keep going and continue all the way around, just adding more and more scraps until you fill up the entire white square, and then fill up the other squares. There's 4 of them, and then once we get all those on there, then we're going to connect those 4 together. So here you can see that I've taken all 4 of the blue scrap pieces and sewn them together. Once I've sewn all 4 of those pieces together, I then trim it down to 36 inches across, 38 inches down. That should account for any seam allowance and enough for me to trim off once I attach the bottom strips. You can see here that I have everything lined up on my design wall the way that I want to sew them together. Before I can do any of that, I need to attach the stars to that blue piece and center all of those pieces on there. I've pinned all of my white stars onto the blue scrappy fabric now. What I did was find the center going this way first, and then I landed these 4 in the center. From this midpoint right here, I then set all the other ones up and just kind of put them as evenly as I could. And as you can see here, they do run at a diagonal. So you can measure them a couple different ways to make sure that you're kind of in the right direction, but you know, it is what it is. Once I had them where I wanted them, I pinned them all in place. Now it's time to press all of these stars onto the blue fabric, and then we're going to do some stitching. I'm going to just unpin it and then take my heat and press it. You can see there that that is already adhered. This makes it adhere just long enough for us to be able to stitch over it. I'm going to finish pressing these all down, and then I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and we'll see what kind of fun we can have over there. What I did here was take a gray thread and just outline the stars, leaving, you know, roughly a 1/4 inch or so on the edge. I want you to notice here though, as I'm rustling this around and underneath my needle and such, you see how it starts to come up. This is not the permanent. The red package, if you bought the Heat and Bond, that one is the permanent one. The reason why I don't use and like the red one is because it's really super stiff, and I like my quilts to be fluid. I don't like any of that stiffness. Once I tack this down, it should stay down for the most part. The edges might fray, and that's totally okay with me. You can see how it started to fray a little bit, but because of the Heat and Bond that we originally put on the stars, that will keep it from fraying totally. I knew ahead of time that I was going to be outlining these stars, and that's why I did not connect all this together until I had all of these stars tacked down. This is just a regular stitch. Come up to the point, flip your fabric around, and you can even cut that tail off now. Remember my tip, always use curved scissors when you trim any of the stray threads off. You can see here that I don't even make this perfectly straight all the way around the stars. Everything is done very organically. There's my star, and you can already see it starting to fray right there. Like I said, I like that, actually. I'm good with that. I hope it all comes up. I wanted to let you know, too, that at the point when you go to put your stars on, stitch them down like I did with the gray, you can also take the time and embroider handmade by or made by and put the year on. That's a good idea because sometimes we forget to put the date and such, and people have no clue who made it or the year that it was made. I am really trying to do that with my quilts moving forward, always putting at least a year. The next step is to sew all 7 of the short pieces together. Once I have those sewn, then it's time to connect it to this piece right here and make any final changes on the size of this as well. Always backstitch. Since there's muslin on the back here, things can get a little bulky. Even though it's really cheap, thin muslin, I'm going to open up the seams to divide that bulk. First though, I'm gonna loosen it up with some water. Finger press open. That water just loosens everything up so that we can maneuver the fabric the way we want. Then you're going to just heat up that seam and press open. Spritz to loosen. I am using my plastic needle nose forceps from my first aid kit to help me get these seams open. Once you get all of the seams open on the one side, you're then going to flip it over, spritz over that seam, and then hot press right over it. Look at how pretty all of these scraps look together. I just love it so far. I sewed the 7 strips together, then I attached it to the blue section. You can see here that I only have a very little bit to trim off on both of these edges. When I attached the stripes to the blue, I made sure that the stars were well out of the seam allowance because that would be terrible if I sewed this all together and then trimmed off one of the stars. I mean, you know, but it could happen. With the bottom stripes all sewn up together, we are at approximately almost 35.5 inches across this way, which means by the time we trim this up, this will be the same as this. All I'm going to do here is take my ruler and match it up along the stripe side. I know that that side is the straightest, and I also know that this seam is also super straight. I'm going to find a line here across, line that up on my ruler, and right here along the side of this red stripe. Again, line it up along the line here, and then turn it over on the other side. Do the same thing, line up along the edge of this stripe and along this seam right here with a line on your ruler. Now it's time to attach this side to this side. I definitely pinned these 2 big pieces together because there's a lot going on here. This is kind of weighty. I'm actually surprised at how weighty it really is. Once I had my quilt top all together, then it was time to spray baste with my 505 spray, which is just an adhesive spray that helps hold the layers together. And I pin basted a Minky type fabric backing on the back of this quilt. I always free motion quilt my own quilts, so I needed what worked for me in my small sewing space. What works for me in my sewing room is my Juki TL QVP. It's a very strong straight stitch machine for piecing and quilting. You can also free motion quilt on this machine, and this is what makes this so wonderful. This was the whole reason why I purchased this machine. I'm gonna pop a picture here. This is what it looks like without the quilt on it. First off, when you look at this picture, I want you to notice that my sewing machine turns on its side for the free motion quilting, which gives you more room on the left and the right, which is totally amazing. This is what sold me on this machine. Then you have your large acrylic table insert that you just slide right on. I'm showing you the hooks on the sides of the wall where I actually pin up my quilt so that there's no drag on my quilt when I'm free motion quilting. So I'll give you an example of that right here. I've got both of my sides pinned up. When I am going through and pushing my quilt, to notice how this sways back and forth. This right here, hanging, takes up all of the drag off of the quilt so you don't get those tiny stitches and that pulling effect. After I purchased this machine, I loved it so much that I became an affiliate with Juki Junkies. What does that mean for you? I have a special link down in my description box. If you click that and you purchase a machine, they are going to take very good care of you and you're going to get some free gifts too. You definitely want to use the sewing channel link. Here I wanted to show you how I drew out some registration lines for my swirls. I just divided the strip up into 4s, halfway, and then split that in half, and then this in half, and then just made the lines. I actually drew out the first few to make sure that I was going to be able to hit the lines, and it was the line that I wanted to hit. So I would start here in the seam, come down. I'm aiming for this line right here. Come down, hit that line, and then make my way back up, come up, and I'm coming up over that middle line, and then going through that middle line and meeting the tip right there of the middle line. And then I'm going to bounce off that line and come back around and as evenly as possible distribute that through. Come back up, hit the top seam here. I am going to free motion quilt some spray stars within a star. I'm going to start at the top of this point right here. Let me show you why I absolutely love this Juki for free motion quilting. Small spaces and then breaking thread and starting in another star. On my foot pedal, when I click it back the opposite way, it literally cuts the thread. Listen. That is amazing, and that is awesome for free motion quilting designs such as this where I have to stop and start. There you have your spray star within a star. Look how pretty that star fabric is. It's just gorgeous. I wanted to share with you that I did self-bind this quilt. I cut off all of the excess, only leaving a 1/2 inch there. This fabric does not fray and it has barely, if no stretch at all in the backing. This presser foot right here is totally awesome. It's called a compensating presser foot, and it has this thick edge right here, which totally helps to keep this aligned. So you would lift this edge up, and then you would just push and sew, and all the while, this right here, this thick metal, is keeping this pushed this way and straight. Are you like me? Do you fall in love with every single quilt that you make? I don't know what it is, but every time I make a brand new quilt, I fall in love with it. Check out that description box for all the things sewing channel. My favorite things, everything used in today's video, my sewing machine, Juki Junkies, links to different videos, it's all in there. As I promised in the beginning, I was going to share with you how many scraps were left in that red clear bag. Friends, I'm ecstatic over this right here. I needed to get rid of some of these scraps. This quilt behind me was truly a scrap busting quilt. Until next time on the sewing channel, take care.